everybody. Welcome to the Talent Pool. And today we have a very special guest back again. And I'm super excited about it. So last week, whenever Ray joined us, their internet connection was a little wonky. And so we decided to call an audible, call it off, and then welcome them back again today so that we can actually hear all of the amazing stories that they have because they're awesome. So Ray, come on out while you're on your way out. Hi, I'm so excited that you're here.
Hello.
I feel like, so what y'all don't know is we started late because we literally sat backstage and we're having this whole conversation. Then all of a sudden I was like, oh, fuck. we forgot to go live. What are we doing here?
Like, oh no, we forgot.
I know. And thank God Chris is back there to keep us like honest and doing all the things. So if y'all are doing lives or ever want to and have not considered hiring a production manager, like Chris is amazing and he's the only reason why we're here. So like shout out to him. And if you're here, say hi in the comments. We want to hear from you and we will talk to you throughout the whole thing. But Ray, I'm so excited to have you back.
Thanks, me too. I know, with internet, with brand new routers. Oh, it's all fancy.
So shiny and fancy. You're like, your house is that like smart home that gains sentience and then all of a sudden starts like taking over your lives, right?
I really do feel that way sometimes. I'm like, can you hear me? Do you know what's going on?
Yeah. I can't. I'm always afraid. I have this fear, and it's not the fear that you would think that I would have. Like people are like, oh, it's listening to me and it's going to learn my buying habits. Well, come on. Like I buy everything off of Instagram. If an Instagram ad targets me, I'm like, ooh, I need that. And then I buy it. What I'm worried about is that I would be talking to my kids or something and I'd be like, oh, yeah. And then I would like say a name, and then I'd be like, that fucking douche. And then it would like send a text message to them. They'd be like, April thinks you're a fucking douche. And then like transcribe the whole conversation. That's my fear. That's why I don't have a smart house.
So you're worried about like the gossip AI chatbot.
Yeah.
And it's like, hi, this just mentioned you in a conversation at a house 10 miles from now. Would you like to hear it?
Yeah. Would you like to hear it? What I do have though, that's super fun is I have, my lights in my room. My kids set it up so that I can do like, what can I do? I can do colors. Can y'all see it changed to red?
Yeah. Ooh. Oh, I like that one.
Yeah, I do it from my phone. And so I can do like, but now I don't know how to get it back. I'm putting it down. See, it is pretty. Thanks, Chris.
It is pretty. It's now going to be blue for the rest of the conversation today.
I think it's yellow.
I'm just kidding. Yeah.
I think I landed on yellow and now I don't know what to do with it anymore. So totally fine.
It does happen.
Okay, so for those who didn't see you last week or like missed it because of the weird internet, you are 100% like, I think we might have been separated at birth, and I'm very excited about that. But also just like, y'all, Ray is just an interesting human. So I want to hear the story. Will you retell us the story about how you worked in the mortgage industry and then you left and decided to fuck off and go play around the world? Because I love this story. It makes me so happy.
Oh, sure. Yeah. So it's been something that I've wanted to do for a long time. I had never been out of the country. And honestly, it started because I do have a twin, and she is my other half, and I call her my better half a lot, but I'm the nicer one. It's fair. I can admit that.
You're
And she knows
the better one. You're just like,
we're very different. We are opposite in every possible way.
Okay.
But we were talking about something and I was like, yeah, I really want to like live in Europe at some point in my life. And she was like, you'll never do it. And I was like, I love you too. Thank you so much. Right. And she said, no, she's like, I love you. She's like, but you don't go out of the country. She's like, you never have. She's like, you haven't been somewhere and like really explored who you were that wasn't within like a quick airplane ride back home if you needed something.
Right.
And I said, okay, well then to spite you, I will eventually go off and away And so I started like planning. I started, thinking about where would I want to go first? What would I want to do? What does that income look like? Things like that. And then I was working for a mortgage company, and in the industry, we knew a few years back that around this time things would start slowing down, right?
Right.
So we kind of saw it coming. We started proactively projecting through like, different budget analysis, me working with finance, how many people do we want to potentially start not hiring so that we don't have to then lay them off, things like that.
Right.
And we were getting into a point where we're starting to slow down. And I knew that there was a potential that someone in my team would have to get let go. And so instead, I had the conversation with the owners and I said, well, how about instead I go? We get someone to come in and step in. You save the team. They get to work hard. They get to stay in place. I was like, but I was like, you have what you need in terms of vision, in terms of projects, in terms of like systems, like this can run for
Right.
wherever you are. And I was like, and honestly, then I can peace out and I can go on an adventure. So I switched to, it took a few months, right? We found the right person, started to get them trained. And then I just basically fucked off to London. And I said, if you need me, I'm around.
Right.
And went into like a contract position basically to help them with year end, to help with the manager and the in between, some of the things that you naturally can never teach someone unless they work under you for like a year or two, right?
Right.
So I went into a contract style and I'd have calls until 11 o'clock, midnight, 1 a.m. But it was needed because the company is national. So if someone in Vegas had a question and needed something and I'm in London, you're like 9 hours away.
Right.
But it was great. It was very fun. And Chris, it's absolutely true. I was just like, oh, I'm having a great time. I went to,
Yeah.
Amsterdam this week and I went to Edinburgh this week. And they were just like, I don't understand. I'm like, but I'm here. I'm like, it's
Right. I'm
easy to
here.
have a conversation. It's easy to prove how simple
Mhm.
it is, but it taught me a lot. So I did that for a little over 4 months. Came back for some birthday things and a contract I had out there finished. So I was like, all right, I'm back on stateside. But I was like, this is great. I loved it. I just went out and did whatever I wanted to do. I've
Amazing.
never done that. I've never not worked, 60, 70, 80 hours a week. And suddenly I'm working, 15, 20.
Right.
And I have this time to be with myself, to meet other people, to explore, to attempt very terribly to speak in French with people, and it was great. So, yeah, it was fun, but it was a little haphazard, a little chaotic, but definitely was something that said I knew I wanted to do this. I brought it up with the owners. We found a plan. We figured out how to do it to make the least loss available, and that seems to have gone pretty well.
That's amazing. I love that. So I'm the queen of fucking off, and going places. My friends know this. So last year I did 3 weeks in Costa Rica, 3 weeks riding my bike around Prince Edward Island in Canada, and
Ooh.
then 3 weeks in Spain and Lisbon. And so this year I'm doing more of like short trips, but more of them. So just
Okay.
um, like I headed up to Pittsburgh for a long weekend to see Ev and Justin Kelly. Or Searle, sorry. I popped down to Greenville, South Carolina to see Ariel Lee. And I'm going out to Memphis for a meetup. And so it's just kind of pop around this year. But the next year I want to get to, and I am doing Portugal for 3 weeks later on this year.
Ooh. Yes.
But next year I want to get to Bali, and like Vietnam, Korea are kind of on my list. So
I would love that. Yeah, now that I've done a big travel, I realize I say this from like a you as in a me perspective. When
yeah,
I was out and about, it didn't occur to me that one of my subconscious fears in traveling was that I spend so much time in my life figuring out how to communicate towards others and meet them in the middle and where they are.
right,
And so language is a big thing for me. And so it didn't occur to me that one of my subconscious fears was that I would get into countries where the language was different and I
right.
wouldn't be able to meet them on their playing field. And so it made me a little uncomfortable when I was in like Luxembourg, right? Or if I was in Paris and
Mhm.
I was like struggling because I was like, I want you to know that I am trying but there is a language barrier, which means it's not as free flowing, which means it feels slightly disconnected. And
Right.
I'm not able to feel as authentically, developing conversation with you.
Right.
And so that was something I definitely had to overcome. And so we're going to keep doing that. I was like, we're just gonna have to keep playing with this. It's like, this is great. You can do it. You can adjust. It's fine. People are very nice as a whole.
Yes.
And so, yeah, I've got a wedding in DC in just a couple of weeks.
What? I'm
Yeah.
right by DC.
Oh, I could come see
You have
you.
to tell me. Yes, I will.
Yeah.
I will come up and see you. It's only like an hour and 15-minute drive from me.
Oh, I love it. Yeah. So we're technically like I fly into DC, but I think we're technically in Arlington.
Oh, yeah. No, I mean, that's all
Yeah.
DC.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah. So
You
I'll
don't
be
have to
there. And then the
like,
next week I'm in Nashville.
okay.
And then at the end of April, I'm in Savannah.
Oh, I love
I
Savannah.
do love Savannah. But
Yeah,
then we're trying to plan Australia for the semifinals and finals for the Women's World Cup. I've
nice.
never been. I'm so stoked. If we can make it, we'll try to like maybe take an extra week and go out to New Zealand or maybe go up to Singapore.
New Zealand's on my list.
Yeah. I
I
just basically want to live in every country for a few weeks, if not like months at a time, and just see what happens.
That's like my dream. That's my dream. My kids are almost at that age where I can go and like, so my dream is pick a country, find an Airbnb, stay there for as long as I want to. If it's 3 weeks, if it's 3 months, if it's whatever. And then when I'm done, just pick another country and like another Airbnb and go. So that's my plan. And I'm hoping like in the next 3 years or so that like the kids are ready for me to do that. And I'm because mine are older. They're like 21 and 17.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
but okay, so I have to tell you though, listen, we haven't even like talked about anything except everything.
I
Um,
know. It's great.
there's this really, really cool website and it's called trustedhousesitters.com. And
Ooh.
I actually have another friend who uses this and like it's so cool. So what you do is you find a place where you want to go and then you reach out to the families and in fact I think Alex Hall and Meg Iredell, I think I saw that they're using it as well now. So it's getting more popular. But basically what you do is you reach out to the people and like wherever they are and you pitch yourself. And then if they like
Huh.
it, then they'll have you come and you stay at their house. You can drive their cars, you take care of their animals, whatever, but it doesn't cost you anything. And they don't have to pay anybody to watch their house, right? So like you can go on
Yeah.
vacation, go stay at somebody else's house, take care of their animals, all the stuff, and not actually have to pay for lodging, which makes it so much more approachable.
Yeah. You're basically saying what I do for my siblings for free, I can do for other people in other
Yes,
countries.
in other countries and super cool places. So,
Oh,
oh,
I love
Jen
this.
asks, do you work on resumes? Are you
I do. I do work on resumes. Depending on your resume, so I'm very good with more of the higher levels or entry level. So if you have colleges, I've done a lot of new college grad resumes and kind of helping them, especially with combination style or skill set style instead of more of the traditional chronological order. So depending on them, I do. But there's also some, great resources that I have. Happy to take a look and help you with your resume. I also know some other people, depending on your field and where you are, that I might be able to introduce you to that are very affordable, but very, very good at what they do.
all right? So, Jim, connect with Ray and y'all can get on that.
Absolutely.
Okay, here's the next thing that I need to know is when you were a kid, you
Okay.
wanted to be an attorney, a Broadway star, or an
Yeah.
animated cartoon.
100%.
Okay, first of all, like go to Broadway musical. What is it?
Okay. If you had asked me this last year,
Mm-hmm.
I would have said Wicked.
Yeah. Okay. So Wicked's really high in mine too.
Yes,
Yeah.
but when we were in London, we saw Anne Juliet, and it is by far one of the weirdest musicals in terms of musicals that I think
Right.
of, and the acting is phenomenal, and the way they restructure 90s pop music is hilarious.
Oh,
I would say that one, and I would say Hamilton are,
okay.
like, very near and dear to my heart, mostly because they're super fun to sing, but they tell really powerful stories
Mm-hmm.
and kind of rewrite things. So Musically, Wicked is my favorite because I can just pretend that I'm Elphaba all day long.
The
But
whole
then, right? And I'm like, yes, I'm flying high. I'm defying gravity every single day, all
Oh my
day.
God,
Thank you
that's
very
my
much.
power ballad song. Like I've got a hat, I've got a trucker hat, and I put
Uh-huh.
it on and I just go around the house and I sing it like I'm gonna fucking rip somebody's throat out whenever I'm finished. Like
Oh
it's
yeah, 100%. But
yeah.
there's something about and Juliet, like my nephews absolutely love the musical. They'll listen to it all day long.
So good.
But because it is so focused on inclusivity and sort of rewriting some of the narrative, if you haven't seen Anne Juliet, I'm not going to give anything away, but it's basically retelling the story of Romeo and Juliet from Juliet's perspective.
Yeah.
And like, what if it wasn't all about like, dying for a guy?
Right.
So, like, what if scenario, like, what if the story tried to be told and now? And so it's incredibly inclusive. The language, the story, it's very colorful. When you're in an audience and you see it, you just see all of these children who are like, oh, I belong, or oh, I see me. And so that was a very powerful moment. So Anne Juliet just has such a special place in my heart now. And as does Hamilton, being able to see some of that story retelling
Mm-hmm.
of what is and what could be, and being very specific with the casting and trying to make it much more inclusive, much more accessible, really having a lot of power behind what they do and their motivation.
Mm-hmm.
Just, yeah, they just have special places in my heart for sure.
So my whole family, we are Broadway nerds. We love it. Have you seen there's a comedian? She's so funny. I can't remember her name. If anybody remembers it, pop it in the chat because she does this whole bit about like she goes to London, she sees Hamilton, and she's in the audience, and like the scene comes on where like Eliza goes out to on vacation and Hamilton stays home and he's like, tell me how to say no to this. And she's like, and I stood up in the middle of the audience and I was like, you are taking advantage of one of your constituents who's just coming and asking you for help and not asking you to have sex with her. And then she's like, tell me how to say no to this. And she goes through the whole thing. It is hilarious. It's one of my
I have not seen that, but now I want to.
I'll find it. I'll pop it into the comments so that anybody can watch it. But so I'm a weird like I'm right with you there. My other ones that I'm somewhat obsessed with,
Yeah.
Natasha Pierre and the Great Comet of 1812. If you haven't
Ooh,
seen it or listened to it, it's so good.
that's a great one.
Hadestown is coming here soon, so that's one that I'm really excited to see. And then
Hmm.
Something Rotten. Have you seen Something Rotten?
Yeah. Yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah, yeah.
my
It's
favorite.
hilarious.
Yeah, omelets. Okay, so we're totally off. Like we've lost everyone at this point. Nobody gives a shit what we're talking about, and I'm so sorry because this is
I
like,
think this is great. This
but
is
this
this
is
is
how you get to know
fantastic.
them, y'all. It's like if you really want to get Ray's attention, then send them your favorite, Broadway lyrics, or ask them to do an animated cartoon voice over for one of your videos or something, right? Because this is something
Yeah.
else that you do. I
I
gotta
do.
get
Yeah, I actually really love it. I did back in college. I got to do a video game, and so I got to sing on it and be one of the characters, and I was so stoked. The character was oh, oh shoot, it was like Dead Zombie number 2 or Dead Zombie number 4 or
it.
something like that, right?
So
So
like
my
a
whole thing, all I had to do was just basically sound half dead and angry. And so it was just like, and they're like, make it more. And I'm like, it was great. It was absolutely hilarious. But people tell me all the time, they're like, you are very expressive. And I said, I know this about me. I was like, it's
I
not
was
hidden.
born under the drama star, and it's fine.
I mean, you grew up with like 3 siblings,
Yeah.
right? I have a twin. So I'm like, at some point I have to stand out some way, somehow.
Mhm.
So it was just very like, be everything all at once. I am able to keep like a poker face when I need to,
Oh, I
but if
can't.
I'm personally telling a story,
No.
no,
I'm one of
absolutely
those
not.
people, if I sit in meetings, like you can basically watch the subtitles of what I'm thinking run across my head. There isn't like a moment where they're like, oh, you're so stoic. I can't read you. I'm like, no, I am an open fucking book, like full stop. There's no
Yeah.
poker face. But you don't just do like cartoons. One of the things that you have done are like training videos for organizations, but you make them fun and kind of animated, cartoony, right?
I do. Yeah. So I've used a few different systems depending on what we're going for. I think I started with a system called Doodle or
Yeah,
something like that.
yeah, Doodly. I have that.
Yeah, and it was really cute. Now there's, Synesia, I'm probably not pronouncing that correctly, and I do like that one. It's just a little bit more, again, inclusive in
Right,
practice. So you can pick a lot of different characters, and then you can do different voices for them. So I always loved doing that, especially when newer generations were coming into the workforce. So I had done a lot of work with a holdings company that had a lot of restaurants under them, and so you've got people that are, 45, 50-year-old bartenders, and then you've got 17, 18-year-old, hosts and hostesses and like new servers, right, going around. And so you wanted to find a way to keep them engaged. And so I was like, well, if I'm just talking at you, as fun as that is for days on end, telling you like what's appropriate to do and what's not, I was like, or I can make something that's like animated or cartoony. I can kind of change some of the voices. So they're like, is that still you? And I'm like, well, yes, that is me. It's so good to meet you today. How are you? Yes, it's lovely. And so you can just have so much fun with it. But then you can put it out there. So then people
right,
can view it, they can interact with it, they're able to answer questions, they're able to comment in the
right,
trainings themselves. And then you can use those to build more communication and collaboration, or figure out what have we not done, explain
right.
like well or not well. And so then we ended up using a system more like Synesia or like Capterra sometimes,
Yeah,
but we would use some of the different programs for more of a professional setting depending on what they were going for. So I did one for like a legal group
I
that was very fun. And so I did one on like harassment, and it was this whole thing about like, hey, would you say that in front of your like godchild? Or it would say like, would
my
you say
God.
that to your grandma? And then
Right,
there's an alternate scene that's like, okay, if your grandma's like my grandma, you might not say this,
right.
but or you might still
I
say
was
it to
gonna
them
say, yeah,
if your grandma's like my other grandma. This is fine.
right. There's that.
But you would do all kinds of like scenarios and sort of different things, and you could do like navigation stories with them, things that get them interacting,
Right,
but also things that are, again, like accessible. So if people aren't able to just read something, maybe they have like ADHD and they're neurodivergent, maybe they
right.
have like certain types of blindness, and so reading is a difficult thing, or they're dyslexic. Being able to make videos that are also engaging, that have audio, that have captions, that then have a translation, or they have different types of workbooks that are functional. These things just help a lot in the workforce. And it's thinking about how can we make stuff, essentially where this training came in and where a lot of these animated voices and ideas came in, was it ultimately, it's like, how do we solve a problem for someone who hasn't been hired yet?
Right,
Right? How do we capture their attention? How do we help them? How do we make this easier for them
right,
before they even step into our door? Because then it's already happened. You've already made it. We
right.
don't have to worry about it. And then that person feels
Mhm.
so much happier and like a better decision. They feel better in themselves of like, yes, I chose the right place
Right.
to come to
These
work today.
people are welcoming me because of my unique characteristics rather than in spite of them, which is such a
Right.
huge thing. I mean, I used to work in the finance industry. And so you want to talk about trainings all the time, right? And my brain, my ADHD brain is such that I cannot sit through videos where people are just talking. I need scavenger hunts. I need activity. Like I have to
Oh,
do
yeah.
things or else I just put it on a separate browser and like let it play and tune out, right?
Oh,
Because the
100%.
because I just can't. Like it doesn't I also can't do audiobooks. Like that's not a thing I can do. If I turn on an audiobook, it takes me approximately 36 seconds to tune out and completely ignore that that's happening. And then like half the time I'll put on music too and I'll be like, why does it sound so weird in here? And I'll realize that I have both of
You
them.
forgot.
Yeah, I just totally
Yep.
forgot. Yeah.
I was initially diagnosed ADHD in like my mid-20s, and I totally ignored it, and then was re-diagnosed, or more officially diagnosed, I don't know, in like my 30s. And I was like, this makes so much more sense.
Yeah.
But I've worked for so many different types of companies in my life. So at one point I worked in disaster recovery. And
Okay.
so our whole thing was individual assistance from like natural disasters, but we also did all of like the oh, I'm blanking on they're called basically the volunteers. So we did
Right.
all the training for volunteers
Oh,
because
okay.
when like a hurricane comes in, you've got to deploy reservists,
Right.
right? So you've got to deploy these people who don't work normally, but have been trained for disaster recoveries and things like that. You have to train all of them. And so I had to get like 36 certifications in 6 months.
Oh my God.
And I was like, this is terrible. This is so boring and this is terrible.
Yeah.
And so I was like, how can I make this better for me? I don't care about anybody else, just like for me, because I have to be able to explain this to someone in a webinar in a few weeks or like at an in-person
Right.
training. And so
Yeah.
I
And I
started
can
like,
assimilate the information myself.
yeah, well, and there was so much like paper record. And so I was like, well, maybe I'll just make something. And so I went and spoke to IT and I said, do you have a program that does like record sharing and like keyword search? And he's like, yeah, I've been working on this thing called SharePoint. And I was
Right.
like, great, how do I use it? And he was like, you can't just use it. And I'm like, I can. It's fine. It's my ADHD audacity. I can absolutely do something I've never
Yes.
done before.
I was just talking about this yesterday with Kaylee. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, there's
You're
nothing
like,
you can't.
I'll figure it out. And so he gave it to me. And so I ended up within like a few weeks putting just decades of data into this SharePoint,
Yeah.
made this navigational tree, created a learning like it's called like a storyline, like tree storyline, but you go through and as you answer certain questions and scenarios, it takes you down different paths of possible reactions.
Right.
And you could destroy everything in the world and like you could win, you could save humanity at the end of it, depending on how you went down the tree.
Right.
And so I did all of that and put it together. And I was like, because this was easier for me. And then it let me take like a tablet to my training so that if I forgot some disaster that happened in 1982 in the wetlands,
Right.
I'd be like, oh no, there's a function right here. I can just look it up by like keyword search and there it is. And I'm like, oh, and here's some fun facts about it. And like, here's some pictures that we can
Right.
associate your knowledge and your learning to.
No, I don't
And
have
that
that
it like just
ability.
started this journey. Like that was one of the first jobs I had. And it kind of started this journey of how do I bring that to other people?
Right. So speaking of, because we're now
Yeah.
30 minutes into our live stream and like actually 45 minutes or 40 minutes into us just like
Yeah, fair.
chatting. So right now you're in a space where you are just looking for the right next gig, whether it's actually with a company or as a consultant, right?
Correct.
And so walk us through like what do you want to be when you grow up this time? And where do you want to be that? What do you want to be doing?
The where is a great question. Because of my recent travels and my explorations, I'm really happy going anywhere because
Okay.
I love new cities and I love exploring. I would love to have an opportunity to do more travel. And so I've done a lot of thinking in terms of what do I want to do? And if you haven't noticed, I really love combining technology with storytelling. So my favorite thing is I now have 13 years of HR and finance experience. And I love it. And so I know a lot about people. I know a lot about
Right.
like DEI. I know a lot about employment law. I know a ridiculous amount when it comes to like poor legislation in bars, but also like overtime rules and the differences in Kentucky versus New Jersey versus California.
Right.
It's kind of crazy. But what I love most is technology.
Right.
And I have found that in the HR space, especially, there are groups that are trying to push them here, trying to push people into technology and into, the 21st century, but it's very slow going in HR. For some reason, when you're dealing with compliance and handbooks and policy docs, it's just constantly like, well, here's a Word doc or here's something that we scanned in for you. Dealing with government systems, it's all very paper based. And so I do a lot of work in trying to push these systems,
Right.
not to the point where just like my house, if one thing breaks, 10,000 things break, right? So not to the point where you're so dependent upon it, but to the point where it brings down other barriers.
Right.
So how can you use technology to make your life easier? How can you build these HR systems and integrate them in a way that becomes much more intuitive so there's less work? How can you make things so that if someone is putting something into a system, it automatically flags and says, hey, you're out of compliance here, or it says, hey, you might want to try a different route, or by the way, if you do this, X is going to happen.
Right.
Because then HR and especially your managers, one, they can focus on you, the individual now, they have more time, but two, they also can't then just fall blindly on policy.
Right.
It's like, no, we have systems built now to kind of keep some of that in line. We can create that functionality for you. You're going to have to talk to people and you're going to have to help them and be a guide for them and do what is human and be a resource for humans, not think of people as cogs, not think of people as a tool.
Right.
You get to be a resource for humans now.
Right. You get to actually put the human back into human resource, where
Right.
for a while there was this huge shift where human resources really became the cover your ass for the organization rather than the let's fill our company with good humans and let's make the right decisions and like rising tides lift all ships type of thing. And so I'm loving watching this shift back to that. For some companies, it's also really terrifying to me that there are so many companies that aren't recognizing that and, not making that shift. I want to give a shout out to Eric, my buddy. I finally get to meet him in Memphis later on this month. It's this month, y'all. So you get to hang with cool people right now for a few minutes, Eric, but like the coolest people are going to be in Memphis for the LinkedIn meetup at the end of this month.
That's going to be awesome. Hi, Eric. It's nice to meet you. That's going to be so great.
Eric, if you don't know Eric, like seriously, talking about good humans, like Eric is just one of those people who has this bright, shining light. And whenever you get a chance to talk to him, it's like getting a verbal hug. I don't know how else to describe it, but.
Oh, I love that so much. Yeah. What a good description for a person.
Well, this is what
I love it.
Like,
yeah.
Thing. So,
I love that so much. Yeah. So basically, I guess long story short, I'm looking at things like HR implementation, admins, HR data analytics and tech, things that I can do to make systems better, and take a ton of stuff away from others. Like I even had great example. Friend of mine was talking about a survey that HR sent out to get a feel for, feedback on managerial staff, things like that, feedback on leadership.
Yeah.
They gave them a set of questions and said, how would you rank this 1 through 5? Didn't tell them what 1 versus 5 was, right? Okay. Like what is the caliber that we're going for here?
Right.
Didn't give them any other type of question for feedback.
You didn't know if 5 was the best or 1 was the best?
You didn't even know if 5 was the best or 1 was the best.
That's crazy.
They didn't say they didn't ask for qualifiers. They asked for very specific things, like pieces of information about you.
Right.
And so I'm like, that kind of takes away some of the trust and the anonymity of these surveys that you're going for. It doesn't say can you just is there anyone outside of your department, or is there anyone that you've worked with in your department or not that you want to give a shout out to, or someone that you've heard other people discuss that you want to be anonymous for them. There wasn't any way to really give it.
Right.
And there weren't alternative options given either. So there wasn't an ability for someone to dial in and push numbers, for example, if they were auditory responsive, or if they had hands, right, or diction issues, mobility issues, things like that. So I was like, what kind of feedback is it going to be? It's not going to be honest.
Yeah.
It's no matter what you do, data is always biased. So if you can be,
not only is the data bias, but you can choose what story to tell about any piece of data, right?
100%.
Whatever this is part of sales, right? I figured this out in sales really, really early on and thought there was a moment where I was like, okay, do I use this power for good or do I use it for evil? Because
Mhm.
you can do it for either
Oh,
one.
yeah.
Eric says that he's seen
Mhm.
and been a part of companies that use HR as the dustbin for taking out the trash. And unfortunately, their definition of trash was upside down. And like
Yeah.
that
The
happens.
number of times that I have seen managers say things like, "Oh, this person just isn't working out. They're not a good fit. They're not learning fast enough." And I go and I sit down with the employee and I spend an hour and have them walk me through their job or their day.
Mhm.
I can't tell you how many times I've seen a person and said, you're in the wrong place."
Right.
Or
You're
I've
in the
said,
wrong.
"Oh, yeah, you just do it like this." And they're like, "Oh, I wish someone would have explained it to me that way."
Right.
And I
Yeah.
go, "Great, you just need a different communication style. You did need a different learning style." Or like, "You are great at this company, but you don't belong in this department. You need to
Right.
be in this department where you're going to be happier. So
Right.
you're more likely to be on time, or you're more likely to have better flexibility. You're more likely to have more accountability for yourself because
Or
you
you can
feel
start, like,
empowered to do so."
you're on the same frequency as the leader there.
Right.
Like there's so many times where I've been in roles where especially I tend to work in like male dominated industries a lot of the time. And so what ends up happening is if you have a great leader who speaks on the same phrase, like I'm like Sirius satellite radio or Spotify or something, but like I've had leaders who only speak AM talk radio, like
Yeah.
that's their, and when they say things to me, I'm like, I individually know all of the words coming out of your mouth, but I cannot string them together in
Right.
the way that they make sense to me at all
Exactly. I
whatsoever.
mean, Eric, talking about you, like I've been told stay in your lane more times than I can count, right? And looking back on it, there are opportunities where I see where that would have been helpful, but in a different way. So instead of being like stay in your lane, be like, "Hey, I'm noticing that you're helping somebody else. Why? Is
Right,
there something in you personally that's driving you to do this, or are you noticing something in them that is bringing this quality out in you of wanting you to jump in and help?" And
right,
it's so much, I feel like this mindset of like it's them or me. Like, jump in Darwinism is in here, right? They've got it, like survival of the fittest.
right.
And I'm like, or maybe not. Like, it's one thing to talk to someone and say, "Hey, it looks like you might be struggling over here. I'm happy to help," or "I don't have the bandwidth to do that."
Right.
There were times where I had to be like, "Yeah, I can't help. Like, I am stretched too thin. I don't have that ability, but like, I might also tell you, here's a different resource that you can go to."
Right.
When you have management that are trying to keep their people siloed and solo, it's telling you that something else is going on here. There is something in that manager that this for them is wrong, and I wonder why. And I think it's the same thing when you're dealing with systems. It's like, "No, this is the system that we use." And I'm like, "But this system doesn't talk to this system."
Right.
So nobody knows what they're doing and no one knows what the pieces are. Going back to like the wrong story, you
Mhm.
can manipulate everything and anything.
Yeah.
So, but if you have colleagues working together, if you have information talking to each other, if you create more open communication and streams for communication, it's going to work better, but it's also going to be harder for people to maybe manipulate or people to control a narrative.
Right. Right.
It's
Which
just much more
means that
difficult to
your
do that.
leaders get to focus on leading instead of trying to micromanage each one of those things to understand each piece of what's happening in the organization. Like,
Yeah.
have you ever seen the movie The Contender with Jeff Bridges?
I
It's an
don't think I
old
have.
movie. It's an old boxing movie, so, like, you have to kind of be into that probably to have watched it, but for those
Okay.
of you who haven't watched it or who have, one of my very favorite scenes ever is Jeff Bridges walks in this room with 2 other business guys. He says nothing, like, there's no preamble. He walks in, sits down on the coffee table and faces them, and he goes, "There are 5 monkeys in this room." And he tells the story about how like these scientists put monkeys in a room and then they hang bananas at the top of a ladder. And every time the
Yes.
monkeys go to the banana, they spray them with cold water for like 5 minutes. Then they
Yep.
take out one of the monkeys, they put a new monkey in. When that monkey that's never been sprayed goes for the bananas, everybody gets sprayed. So then they take another monkey out, put that one in. When it goes for the banana, all the other monkeys jump on top of it and beat the shit out of it because they don't want to be sprayed, right? So pretty soon you have 5 monkeys who have never been sprayed, but none of them ever touched the bananas. Why? Because that's the way it's always been done around here.
Yep. It's a
And
learned behavior.
it is, and
Yeah.
it's such an interesting, especially in HR, and especially with these systems where you have people who are saying like, well, this is the system that we use. Well, if it doesn't work, then stop using it,
Stop
right?
you. Well,
Yeah,
you also get into that idea. You have the learned behavior, and then you pair that with the fear of unknown and change.
yeah,
And it's also something very difficult, especially in the HR space, because you're sort of this center of trust.
right.
No matter what, HR can make or break employees and their trust in a company. And so if you're thinking about it, you're like, all right, well, if we test this new system and it doesn't work, or it doesn't fix what we got sold by the vendor that it's going to fix, we've lost the trust.
Yeah,
And so what are we going to have to do? Go back to the previous system, which isn't solving any of our problems and is still causing us issues.
right.
So it is a very sort of like fine line in the HR space, even in IT space, as an executive, of being like, we're going to put this platform out. It could possibly not work, but
Yeah,
we need to do something that's different and hopefully better. If it's not better, we want to take you and be very open in that journey that we're going to try a few things until we get it right.
right,
And even then, eventually it's still going to break or it's not going to fit us
right.
because we, the company, we, the people in the company, are going to change.
Hopefully, right?
Hopefully, hopefully we're going to do well.
Yeah,
The systems that you use for one person and 10 people, you're going to have to do different system scale to get to your first 50 employees, to your next 100 employees. And then you have to do completely different scales when you get to the 250, 500, and 1,000. So you're constantly changing stuff. And I think one of the biggest things that I've learned is that HR focuses so much on creating the boundaries and the handrails basically around these things that they're launching,
yeah,
that they forget to tell people why they're launching it, what its purpose is,
right.
what their difficulties are when they're launching it, because I don't know, maybe they want to feel like they're superhumans.
Yeah,
But I would much rather tell someone, this is what we're launching. This is what we're going to do a test on first.
right,
This is why we're going to openly get your feedback on it. We're going to tell you if it's working or if it's not working.
right.
We're going to explain some certain things. And if it fails, I'm going to own it and say, hey, yeah, this isn't going very well. We're going to pivot. We're going to try something different.
The culture that that builds too, where all of a sudden when you see HR and leadership taking risks, admitting that they might fail, and then being willing to own that, how
Yeah.
much more often are you going to have employees who do the exact same thing, right? Who come to you and say, like, this is a risk. I might fail, but if I succeed, this is going to make us, it's going to make our customers happier, which will make our shareholders happier, who will then make our employees happier. And it it turns into this whole thing, which
Yeah.
I love.
It really does. I mean, it's the same thing. I sort of had this like I guess aha. It was also kind of like my chaos year of life where I kind of came in and said, you know what, I don't care. Like this company I was, doing some work with wasn't doing everything on the up and up. And it was really creating a lot of fear and uncertainty within the people. I would walk around like different cubicles and departments and they would stare at me like, why are you in my space? And I'm like, I literally want to say hi. I am so bored. I want to say hi to you and figure out what's going on.
I
Um,
love it.
and so I'd wander around them. And so I realized I wasn't coming with my true authentic self.
Yeah.
I wasn't being open with them about what my difficulties were. I wasn't being open with them with the part of me that is important. Like you might notice in my name, it says they, them, right? Or like my queer background. So I started putting subtle hints and then very not subtle hints into my
Mhm.
office. And I even had them like remove the door at one point and replace it with like a clear door. Cause I'm like, this doesn't matter.
Right.
I'm like, if I'm going to go have a difficult conversation with someone, I'm not doing it in my office because I need my office to be a safe space.
Right.
And when I started coming out to like my more authentic self, when I started being genuine with them, when I started creating proactive communication strategies and in work and in my personal life, right? Like more employees came out within themselves too. They started, like I had an employee, it's I think my favorite thing, and then I'll stop, but it's probably my favorite thing. I had an employee come up to me And he said, I've never worked for a company before where I could be me. And I said, well, I was like, are you not being you right now? Because who you are is lovely. And he
Yeah.
said, no, I never painted my nails. I never like dyed my hair. Like I always felt like I couldn't wear like beanies. So I always felt like it had to be, in a very professional cut. And like I had to wear suits and I was always so uncomfortable. And I was like, but who you are is so colorful.
Yeah.
I was like, and what you do is so vital. I'm like, you're so nice to everyone. I was like, your customer service responses are huge. Everyone likes working with you. You're so calm and you're
Right.
so easy to be around. And he said, well, that's because I'm around people who let me be me. He's like, I had never had that happen before.
Oh my
And I
God.
was like, and this is why I'm in HR.
Ray. Oh my
But
God.
you set those, right? And you let those stories be and you let them tell you these things. And I will be the first person to tell you that I'm terrible at telling my own story in terms of like highlights or successes and whatever. But those people, them being able to tell their story, them being able to be their most authentic self, that's why I come to work every day. And that's what I'm looking to do, is to continue that building systems, building analytics so that people can be honest and open and feel safe about doing it, and letting companies have real change from that.
Oh my God. I love that
Yeah.
so much. And I feel like that is your story, actually. Like your story is that you create a safe space for other people to tell and live their true, authentic story. And that makes me so happy. And I wish I could sit
Thanks.
here and talk to you for like hours because I feel like we could just do this. But
Mhm.
I have to run because I have a call at 2 o'clock. So, y'all, if
Sure.
you don't know Ray, connect with them on LinkedIn. If you have job connections for them, let them know. I actually, as we were talking about this, I have a couple people I want to introduce you to as well. So I'll do that through LinkedIn
Oh,
DMs. And then join us next time for the talent pool. If you are underemployed and looking for a job, please let me know. Slide into my DMs and we will get you on the show as well. Thank you so much for being with us. I just love you. You just bring
I
me
love
some.
you too.
All right.
You're
Yeah.
good people. I'll message you about DC. I would love to catch up.
Yes, yes, yes. It'd be
Yeah.
me.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. And thanks so much, April and Chris. Thanks for everything with the show. I really appreciate it.
We love you. See ya.
I love y'all. Bye.
Oh, yeah. Whoops. I did.